Today in the Fresh Brew Run Club, my 3 tips for running the Cleveland Marathon. Welcome back to the Fresh Brew Run Club. So today's video, I'm talking about the Cleveland Marathon. So this video is going to go live 1 week before the Cleveland Marathon starts. So maybe you found this video, you're kind of looking for advice, some tips. Hopefully I can provide some information there. I ran the Cleveland Marathon last year and I really enjoyed it. It's a well-run race. If you've decided to run the Cleveland Marathon, you have made a fantastic choice. I think you're going to have a great time. I think I have a couple tips to help make the most of your experience both on the course and off the course. Quick disclaimer, I do know that the course is different for 2023. I looked at the map. I really like the change. They took off this long out and back that was along the water. It was kind of windy. It felt like it was going on forever and ever and ever. It was really a mentally exhausting portion of the course. They took that long stretch out, kind of reduced it, and then added more running in the neighborhoods and downtown areas of Cleveland, which I think is a much needed change. So let's dive into my 3 tips for the Cleveland Marathon. So the first tip, this is Cleveland, which is a city that sits on Lake Erie, and this race takes place in May. So there are 2 kind of factors that could possibly contribute to some not so great weather. You could get some wind coming off the lake. You might get some rain. It could be freezing. It could be humid. It could be hot. You never know. So just prepare for a couple different weather scenarios. But I think wind is something that you might want to keep an eye out for. Again, it's a race that takes place right on a great lake, Lake Erie. But just something to keep in mind heading into this race, there may be some weather that you have to deal with. My second tip, if you look at the course map, you can see that there are a lot of sharp turns. There's twists and turns all over the place on this course. So it is very important that you run what are called the tangents, which is basically the shortest distance on the course. So this is actually how marathons are measured. They take the shortest possible route that is legally allowed within the bounds of the actual course or the road that you're running on and measure it that way. This is especially important to remember when there's so many twists and turns in a course like the Cleveland Marathon. If you're on the outside of those turns, you're going to end up running a lot further than 26.2 miles just because you're not running those tangents. Now, I don't recommend that you cut a bunch of people off and expend a bunch of energy trying to get to the inside of every turn, but just try to take a smooth line as close to the inside as you possibly can, without endangering other people on the course. That is a great way to shave off seconds or maybe even a minute or 2 off your time. And then my third and final tip, if you look at the elevation map, it doesn't look like there's anything over the top as far as hills go. It's not a super hilly course. It's relatively flat. However, it may not seem like much, but the increase in elevation at mile 24 and a half, let's call it, can be a killer if you're not prepared for it, and it almost wiped me out completely. This is not the most incline in the world for a marathon. I think it's less than 100 feet of elevation increase, but you are almost to 25 miles, which means you're probably about as tired as you're gonna be before you get that adrenaline rush of the final stretch. So just something to keep in mind. It may not look super impressive on the elevation map, but you are going to be very tired and you're gonna see this very long and kind of desolate hill at mile 24 and a half. It's about 0.8 miles long before you get to the top of it. There's really not that many people there that were cheering when I ran by it. It was the closest I came to having to stop and walk. I powered through it. Again, it's totally doable. It's not like Heartbreak Hill or anything where it's going to completely knock out half the field of the marathon, but something to keep in mind. I wouldn't recommend saving any energy for this hill, but you just have to have it in your head that like, hey, okay, there's going to be some challenges at mile 24 and a half that you need to be prepared for. So just be aware of that. Again, not an overly hilly course. There are some hills, but that last hill was tough. Once you get over it, you're pretty much in the home stretch. You were just outside of downtown, and then you can zoom back in, and then the crowds are back, and the adrenaline and the music and the finish line and all that stuff that can really propel you across the finish line. So those are my 3 tips for the Cleveland Marathon. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. Now, I do have 2 bonus tips, and this is not race specific, but more for before and after the race. I did eat at a place called Rebowl, which is in the Cleveland Public Square right downtown. It was a great place to grab a really healthy meal. I had like a bowl that had brown rice, vegetables, chicken, like basically the perfect pre-race meal the night before the race for me. It was really good. And after the race, especially if you're someone like me who's visiting Cleveland for maybe the first or second time, one of the things to check out that I highly recommend is the West Side Market, which if you are hungry, which I imagine after a marathon you're going to be hungry, I highly recommend this. They have all kinds of food vendors, everything you can think of, meats and cheeses and desserts and everything in between. So check that out. It's a really cool building. It's like this big like market hall, and they have all kinds of vendors there. You can do a little bit of touristy stuff, but also replenish all those calories that you burned charging up that hill at mile 24.5. So that is my video for today. If you have any questions about the Cleveland Marathon, again, let me know. If you have any advice or tips of your own, if you've run the Cleveland Marathon before, share those in the comments below. But that'll be today's video. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. And if you're running the Cleveland Marathon, I hope you have a great race.